Cheers, everybody, and welcome to another episode of your favorite late Friday night hashcast variables. I am one of your hosts, Frigroli, aka how do you pronounce that? And we've also got Pedro, aka Mr. Rosin's neighborhood, and of course, Superior Buds, aka Superior Buds 420. Tonight, we'd like to welcome our special guests, one of my good friends, first online and then in real life, another panelist with me on the Michigan Bros Grow Show, and one of my favorite and most respected flower growers here in Michigan. He is a craft cannabis caregiver, takes much pride in that. He has worked in the commercial industry. He's worked for himself, with other people, for other people. Clearly, as you see, a fan of Michigan, local to, well, we'll get to that. But Red Center Farm, cheers, man. Thanks for joining us tonight. You guys can find us streaming live on YouTube, Twitch, X, and then, of course, after the show, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
man. Welcome.
Fantastic intro.
Cheers, Red.
Appreciate you. Cheers,
What you
guys.
chiefing on, dude?
This is some flow.
Okay.
It would be Afghani and a purple tie blend that DJ Short bred many, many years ago. He then did some work with Dutch Passion. Dutch Passion dropped some seeds of flow with his work. There was some back and forth between their relationship. I don't believe they work together anymore. Long story short, this is not DJ Short's flow. As of recent, this would be I believe the Dutch Passion version, which would be flow of yesteryear. So smoking on some good old school throwback.
Nice.
You know, the controversy aside, this is great weed. You know, I don't care who bred it. Originally, DJ Short bred it, so shout out to him, most importantly, for all of his work that he's done over the years. I'm certainly a fan of his work, the Blueberry, and coincidentally, it's through one of his seminars that brings me onto the interwebs with meeting Old Man Hermit Hash at one of his seminars and then being brought into the Michigan Bros Grow Show space back in like 2019, I believe, back not long after the show began. So it was really cool.
So you've already dropped some knowledge on us with the lineage and stuff. Those are things I can never keep track of, and I don't pop enough seeds to probably need to track. But speaking of breeders, you talked about DJ Short and some others. Do you have a particular favorite breeder at the moment?
Not so much at the moment. I do have a handful of, I guess, just from like what I've had experience with working with. Archive being one of them. Fletcher with Archive has done a great job holding on to really good, also like kind of throwback genetics, not so much working into the bottleneck pool, if you will, like the similar, like, you know, everything kind of in the line of the cookies run. He kind of goes off of that and works with some other older strains, which is more of a burnt rubber, gassy, you know, some older like sativa note type plants, skunks and things like that. I see Daddy Red in chat. Shout out to my dad in there. He's always poking around. It's good to see him in there. Cheers, Daddy Red.
Cheers, Daddy Red.
And also everybody else that I do see in chat. I don't have my phone right in front of me, and since I'll be conversating, I just want to get my cheers out of the way right now. So
actually, if because we are streaming on so many different platforms right now, in fact, we're at least 8 of them simultaneously streaming live. I'm not sure I think you should be able to see it here on the back end, Red. If you look at the comments tab on probably to the right of our video that you're looking at, that is streaming all of the comments from all of those different streams all in the one spot. So I mean, you might be able to respond individually per channel and all that there as well, or just in mass. But yeah, you should be able to see them rolling in.
The comment section in the StreamYards program here is everybody.
Yeah, it's all of them. So if you guys have any questions for Red Setter, just do that at symbol Red Setter, or any of us, Pedro, Ferroli, Superior Buds. We'll see it and kind of highlights it for us and
see
lets
it.
us know.
If I miss it, spam me.
Yeah, right. Just shout Red from the rooftops. Hey, so can you? I mean, I'm curious to know kind of how you got your start into all of this. But for I mean, for a lot of us, usually we don't just start growing weed. Usually that's like, we're like a sly teenager or some so thereabouts, and we get our hands on some delicious tree, or some friends, peer pressure us into it, or I don't know, we just somehow we fall into this first smoke, right? Do you have a story to share with us about your first time smoking?
First time I smoked weed was by myself. It's not. I don't hear that story too often. The first time I smoked weed was not out of peer pressure. It was out of sheer curiosity. Um,
That's
I
so good to hear because I share the same fucking story. I love
You do.
it.
Nice.
Mhm.
Nice. Yeah, and it was there was a lot going on in the mid late 90s as far as the cat coming out of the bag, so to speak. California, was it Prop 215? I'm not sure what their medical, whatever their medical thing that happened in California in the mid 90s, 96, I believe, originally got medical. There was a couple of HBO specials that I had seen where this man with HIV gave a monologue, and he was talking about cannabis helping his HIV. I had seen many other testimonies of people with cancer, and cannabis was helping. And mind you, this is in the mid 90s. I'm 12 to 13 years old, and I guess I was just kind of becoming one of those, ruffian teenage kids. But to be honest, I had also gone through the DARE program. I similar to you, for girly. I have a medal. Yep. I have one of those medals, and not everybody in the class got a medal. Only the ones that spoke and got selected from their essay got to receive a medal and the DARE award, so to speak. It was only a couple people who got the DARE award in our class. I got the DARE award. Anti peer pressure.
And now look at us, Red.
Yeah, anti-drug is what definitely. I'm still anti peer pressure, right? And so I suppose that at the time of getting into smoking cannabis, when it was my turn up to bat, I was curious. I was curious because people were being helped by cannabis. I was curious because I had drank alcohol and I had kind of felt the effects of alcohol, and it was pretty miserable. And I was like, damn, this is kind of rough. People are getting helped with cannabis. This is weird. So I tried to source it. I had overheard some kids in class. I don't know. I was in like 7th grade. I overheard some kids in class talking about smoking weed. One kid in class had a bag of weed and was like walking down the hallway, like very foolishly, like throwing it up in the air. So I went to that dude. I went right to that dude. I went straight to that dude and asked him to get.
Now you know.
and he gets me this little thing of foil. I'll never forget. This is a little thing of foil, and I show it to my buddy. I'm like, hey, check this out. I got the shit, dude. And we break it open, and we're in class, and we look at it, and it smells kind of fruity, and it smells kind of funky. And he's like, dude, that's tobacco. That's pipe tobacco. I'm like, no, he's the dude. So the dude sold me. It was like it was either black and mild tobacco or pipe tobacco. So I think it was broken. I think it was black and mild. I think it was his black and mild dumped out. So I'm a little upset about that. So I go to another dude and I tell him about the story. He gifts me a sack, dude. A sack, man. Like a fucking sack, a few grams. And it was green. And I'm telling you, this is mid to late 90s. Weed was not green around my area. I grew up on the in the Detroit suburb, the western Detroit suburbs. Just I went to Wayne State University, downtown Detroit. From my house to Wayne State is about a 15-minute drive, 20 minutes of traffic. So right on the outside Detroit suburbs. And most of my life in high school, we called downtown Detroit brown. That was just the dirt brown. It was brown weed, man, and full of seeds and stems. And for once, my first sack of weed was some green weed. It smelled really good. I remember it had some red hairs, and I treasured this sack, dude. And I like fucking the little guy with my precious. I took my little precious down to the well, And
What's his name, Schmiegel or whatever.
Schmiegel, there it is, Schmiegel. Schmiegel, and it smells great. And this is weed. I'm like, this is weed right here. You know, I got a little. It's in a cellophane, a cigarette cellophane or something like that. And so the kid that gave it to me, he gives it to me. He's like, this is I got it from my mom. Stashed it from stole it from his mom's stash. Okay. So he gifts it to me after hearing my like rip off story, you know, getting ripped off. And Daddy Red, he works day shifts. Mama Red, she works day shift. They're both at work, and I got like a half day at school. Cool. I get home from work at like 11 o'clock. And I have no idea what weed is. I had smoked a cigarette or two, and I'd gotten that head buzz from a cigarette. I drank some Surge, you know. Surge was fucking phenomenal. Surge and my rollerblades, you know, and I went to town on that fucking doobie, man, and I smoked a little bit of it, and I was high all fucking day. I'll never forget that. And I got like, it felt good. I was like, huh, this is cool. I went around on I went for a little bike ride. I ate so much shit, dude. I ate watermelon, I ate cereal. I remember it all. I remember the entire fucking ride.
Did you cough up along like the first like couple
yeah. I mean, and honestly, I got high. I got really high that first time I smoked too. And I smoked because I rolled my own doobie. I sat there and I figured out this fucking doobie, man. I had some like Tops papers or zigzag papers.
That's pretty impressive.
And I sat there and I fucked around with this thing. I rolled myself a doobie. Mom and Dad were both at work, and I just hit that thing a few times. And one of my buddies came over, and he was fucking with me because I was high, you know. And then I remember having to go help my grandmother out and move rocks, big pile, like a yard or two of rocks sitting on her fucking driveway, you know. For me, a big fucking pile, move it to the backyard, you know. I was high all fucking day moving those rocks, dude. Going to have dinner with my mom and grandma, and I'm like, still high. It's like 6 hours later. How long does this shit last, man? You know. And it kind of turned me on because I didn't feel like any of the effects from the propaganda that I was told, you know, any of that stuff. And also the next, I didn't have any kind of a hangover, nothing, not a damn thing. And through months or years of getting a dime bag here, a dime bag there, trying some weed, you know, at a bowl, whatever, you know, by this time I may be, I don't know, 13, 14. I'm young. Very young, smoking weed. But to be honest, it was for me kind of helping. I lost my 18-year-old cousin when I was 11. I was 11. She was diagnosed with brain cancer. She had a neuroblastoma. It wasn't long. I think she was diagnosed when she was 16 or 17. It was not long before the brain tumor had taken her life. Surgery was no longer an option. And it wasn't long after me being 11, 12 years old that I started to hear about people with cancer being helped with cannabis. And that's really what flipped the switch for me, for saying, well, why is the police officer at school telling me that cannabis is bad and there's a drug dealer in a trench coat that's going to, like, you know, chop my arm off? And then
it's always the trench coat.
and my cousin could have been saved by the cannabis. So I was really young when I started to get these perplexing thought, like almost believing in conspiracy, like what is going on, you know? And then as I was a young teenager, I realized that it was conspiracy, that there really was this cannabis conspiracy, that cannabis was taken away from the human population. The Emperor Wears No Clothes. I believe it's the Jack Herrera story. Really one of the first, you know, get the story out there. And so it was pretty early on that I had gotten information from that. I was obviously, I had the internet as a youth, and more information was coming out. And I really started to get the itch of, we've been lied to. We've been kind of backstabbed in a way. Our health has been disrupted. And the older I got and the more I learned about cannabis, I kind of got a little mad. And, you know, learning that cannabinoids have been actually taken away from us, from our livestock, CBD, hemp, and not just because we could get high from it and medicinal, but because it was a great source of fuel, fiber, could replace trees, agroforestry, all these ecological reasons, helping the destruction of the rainforest, etc. I was pretty ecologically, environmentally friendly. I wanted to be environmentally friendly as a child. It's something that I really found passion for. It was a big movement when I was a kid in the early 90s, like Save the Whales and all that stuff. I love the movie Free Willy. What I mean? Stuff like that. It's just little bits of like propaganda that might trigger little things, but in a way, it was good for me. Getting forward into getting high with cannabis, I started feeling that like that kind of like depression that had taken over as a youth, losing my cousin. A couple years later, another cousin almost died from psychedelic mushrooms that were not psychedelic; they were poisonous.
Oh, geez.
Poisonous mushrooms being sold to him as psychedelic mushrooms. And so all of these kind of like ways that make you not really trust certain things. You definitely don't trust drugs, and so I really was scared of drug use, or I should say peer pressure for that matter. And later on, that specific instance really got me turned into the harm reduction side. Polarity science that I also do is a harm reduction here in the Ann Arbor area, Washtenaw County, and in other parts of Michigan. We have decriminalization laws of psychedelics and of mushrooms and things. And so I started this polarity science, which was harm reduction. And so that bases from that, but not to digress too far. The overall love for the plant really came from the medicinal and just overall same as just about everybody that I talk to that loves cannabis. It has so much potential, and it was taken away from us so foolishly. And then you learn the politics involved behind it. You learn that it was the logging industry and the plastic industry and the oil industry, and they get together and they lobby and that the American Medical Association fought for cannabis to keep it legal, or to keep it, as medicine. And you learn about these things, and and then you learn that a lot of people are very ignorant to it, and that they just don't know about it, and that it's not just conspiracy, it's fact. It really happened. And that's where like when I was growing up, people who were into cannabis, and it was kind of like stereotypical, it's kind of cliche, but you're smoking cannabis, you might talk about conspiracies sometimes, and so be it. I mean, the biggest conspiracy of them all was real. You know what I mean? That the cannabis was taken away from us. So yeah, I would every now.
It's kind of a side effect of the medication, right, Red? Like it's. I mean, you can call it a lot of different things, but yeah, opening or expanding your mind to the possibilities of other things, and just maybe questioning things a little bit more. And I was going to ask, when the first time you did that, and listening to your story, it sounds like it wasn't right off the bat. Like, it wasn't like the first time you got high, but it was.
No, it wasn't.
With that kind of, excuse my French on this, but the tree hugging side of you, right? Like that, along with that kind of came this like, all right, well, maybe there's some propaganda here. Maybe there's some conspiracies here. And it was just because it's a conspiracy doesn't mean it's not true or factual. There are conspiracies out there that exist. It's a conspiracy to do something, right?
Yeah. And I'm not saying that all conspiracies are real, but there are fun rabbit holes to get down. And I don't ever, obviously some of them you can go, yeah, it's whatever. But then some, but I mean, for whatever one, some of them are fun to get down the rabbit hole on. But I mean, a lot of them we do find out, like MK Ultra. I'm not going to list a whole bunch of them and start conversations.
There's plenty.
More controversy. But yeah, in the cannabis one, we all know we're still riding that wave. This is still a wave that we're riding the propaganda side of things. People are still coming out with the propaganda that's bad for you.
Well, there's still a lot of people that exist on this planet that went through 40, 50 plus years of that propaganda and are maybe still not even really conscious of the culture shift, you know, and
Yeah.
they go vote too.
Right. And I guess a long story short, all of that combined is what got me into cannabis. The medicinal side of things really turned me into like wanting to narrow my thoughts. Now when I was a teenager, I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to do all these things. When I got out of high school, I went to Wayne State University, and I was just taking, I was gonna try to be a designer. I didn't really know what the fuck I wanted to do. Honestly, I was one of those like, trying to find myself teenagers. I ended up dropping out of Wayne State after about a year because I just couldn't pass physics, man. Physics was just not happening. And all these pre-ed classes that I was having to take, I was just like, what the fuck, man? I don't want to do any of this. I want to work.
It does suck, man. All those requisites.
I really wanted to work with my hands. I was really artistic, technically. Like I used to like work with headline. I used to make speaker boxes for my friends. I had small businesses working with, changing out headliners and doing door panels. And I go down to the textile store here in Ypsilanti. I live, in Westland, and I'd come out here to Ypsilanti and get the fucking textile stores, and pick up some shit and redo headliners with foam and do stuff like that. I wanted to work with my hands. I ended up getting my license to fix airplanes, and because you could work with composites and sheet metal, and they taught you all these hydraulics and pneumatics. So I ended up dropping out of Wayne State and doing all of that. And I worked in the airline industry for a couple of years fixing valves for a manufacturing company. It was actually a German manufacturing company, had a shop not too far from here. And I worked for them for a couple of years until I had gotten a random drug screening and lost my job to that. Now I wasn't a full-time grower at the time, but I was growing a plant at my house. I was a regular smoker. I've been a regular cannabis consumer since probably just out of high school, if not maybe even my senior year of high school was kind of that like, I'm gonna smoke some weed.
Don't get too far, because you told us about your first smoke, and I'm very curious to hear about your first plant too, or your first grow.
Yeah. So that was kind of after I moved. Well, my first plant was when I was 14. And that was in my bedroom window, started a seed. When I was in 7th grade, in I believe it was 7th grade biology, we learned how to germinate seeds. And they would give us a petri dish and paper towel, and we would get a bean, and we put the bean in the petri dish with the paper towel. Well, I had some bag seed. My dad had
14 years old rolling around with bag seed.
How much electrical tape? Daddy read in chat. He had electrical tape. You know what those electrical tape canisters used to look like?
Yep.
Dishes. Well, I put 2 and 2 together. Daddy read, I'm going to borrow your electrical tape container. He might have 1 or 2 of those go missing back in the day. Pop a couple holes in that thing, stuck it, the seed germinated. I said, holy shit, I have a germinated seed. Mama Red, she's a master gardener. So she's got gardening equipment. She's a green thumb.
And a couple handfuls of soil. You never miss it, Mom.
So I started the plant in my window, and that sucker got 3-4 nodes tall. It started actually growing leaves. And I was like, all right, this thing's in my window wasn't upstairs. My window was in the basement. So ground level. Dad mows the grass right by the, so I'm lawnmowers going by. I move the plant, lawnmower goes back. So it's I'm trying to think of ways to grow it in my closet, and nowadays there's like all kinds. So I used to try to think of all these like armoire setups. I built an armoire and put a grow light in there and all this stuff. And now
reading up on PC cases and shit.
Super cool. I wish I would have invested in building that stuff as a kid. I was always all over building way too much stuff. So building ramps and shit like that. So I would have loved to have gotten into that. And I still may try to get into something that someday. I love working with wood. That plant I ended up taking down to the woods behind my house with a buddy of mine. And this is where I learned that loose lips sink ships. First, and I was 14 years old. What a prime age to learn that. You know what I mean? It really fucks your trust. With
never too early, never too late to learn.
Yeah, exactly. So I go on vacation after planting this little plant down in the woods with a bucket. And I get back, and this dude that I went down there with tries to sell me this little fucking pill container full of shake. No buds, just shake, just leaves. It's July. That plant was only knee high. It wasn't even a little bush. It was gone. That fucker tried to sell me my own plant. Learned real fast, man, the ways, to just, loose lips sink ships. And so I got really, when I first started to grow like indoor, that was when I was in my early 20s. I was living on my own. It was, if I could round out a year, it was probably 2007, 2008. Definitely in the 2008 range. When we went medical, I had no problem doing it. And I was living in a house in Dearborn. And I had a whole bunch of.
So did you get your caregiver card like right when that turned medical?
No, this was just me growing some plants up in an
Okay.
I didn't have a caregiver card at the time.
So you just kind of saw that the culture was shifting, and you're like, all right, well, I can at least throw a couple of these in my house or backyard or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was already illegal for me to smoke. I was smoking weed. I wasn't really. I'd buy a couple. I wouldn't buy a couple dime bags because I was smoking a decent amount of weed by the time I was, in college, out of college. But
had you ever been to a grow op at this point?
No,
Okay.
I'd never seen a plant. That's why I wanted to grow weed. I'd never seen a plant, and I really wanted to see it. I wanted to see what the flowers look like. I couldn't figure it out. I'd seen High Times magazines, but it was always like curled up leafy weed, you know what I mean? It was, and I couldn't figure out how the plant like looked, and then I'd see it in High Times, and I was like, all right, it's kind of like this, but it was never like the full thing, I don't know. I just really wanted to see it for myself, in person, and I eventually grew one, and I started with some CFL lights on clamp light, the shop lights with the clamps, domes. Added some V splitters, screwed in some like 100-watt blue CFLs for veg, and then I don't know where the information was on, like maybe what were they? IMAG. What were the main ones on maybe Shroomery or even something like that. I got some of that information on. Like there was not a lot of weed information. There was a couple good sites, and then all of the other information I learned about growing was learning how to grow tomatoes and peppers and shit. And there was some of that information on YouTube, and otherwise it was just documents on the internet, books you would find, learn how to grow stuff. But my mom, she was a master gardener. She was always getting landscaping done. I was always having to help work with landscaping. My neighbors had gardens, and I always had to go and those were my first jobs making money as a kid, was, mowing lawns and also weeding gardens, planting plants, planting flats of fucking petunias and pansies and shit like that as a 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 17-year-old forever. So, I mean, a lot of my hands-on experience comes from just that type of repetition work. And then I really got the green thumb when I was probably 24, 25. And at that time, I think that was in like that 2008, maybe 2010 range. I'd grown a plant, done the thing. My buddy had a garden, and he made some pickles. And I moved back home after growing that plant under the CFLs. And actually, a buddy of mine had given me a gymnasium light, 1,000-watt fucking globe, big ass globe. It didn't have the hood on it. It just was a bulb attached to that square back.
Got it out of the stock room or something, scooped one of those big suckers in his backpack, and
with a really shifty fucking electric cable coming out of that thing. You know what I mean? Plugged into an attic, and you could just see the heat coming off the attic. Like the heat signature, you could literally see light coming out of the attic.
That looks tasty.
It's terrible. That looks really good. Pedro, what you got there?
Primal Punch from Outdoor Grow this year.
Ooh, okay.
The so I get a clone swap for the light. Grows this plant huge. This plant fills out most of the attic. This one plant, and I ended up cashing in on that plant with some people that I worked in the service industry. So here's a bag. Ended up buying a couple pounds off of the money that I got for that bag. Started kind of doing the same thing. A bunch of the people that were A bunch of people that were there at the service where I worked in service industry were going to Detroit, kind of shifty neighborhoods, pick up their bags. I knew some people I could get some weight from, so I kind of started I'll call it just splitting weight, right? People needed weed, I needed weed, so we just split the bags, right? So we split the bags, and I'd get my weed for free, essentially. So I mean, that's kind of how it all started. It was just really, I was a smoker, and I was splitting bags with friends. I could go get weight, and we'd all pitch in, and I'd get my weed for free. And then from there, it turned into growing a little bit more. I ended up moving back home with my parents when I was in my early 20s. And that's when I really started a vegetable garden. That's the primal punch right there. Okay.
The cool thing about that is that's my 4th polls.
That's
Really?
what I thought it said.
You saw how fucking just greasy, nasty.
And he gave us a good
Gorgeous.
macro shot, right, of that one, Pedro, in our chat, and it is super clean still. Like super, super, super clean.
Oh, it's really nice.
Anyways, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay.
With my visual.
No, I love being distracted like that. Fortunately, I kind of remember I'm at in the tail. But the vegetable garden that I got into was really set up my green thumb. I moved back to my parents' house, and I got permission to like basically turn the entire back length of their yard into a vegetable garden. And I really wanted to become a caregiver at this time. My friends convinced me to go get my medical card. I went and got my medical card. By this time, it's like 2009, 2010, something like that. I now moved back home because I have my dog, Dog, and he's a pup, and he needs a place to stay. I was going to move to Detroit and do some, shifty stuff, start a party house, and it just wasn't, it was a terrible move. Moved back home to my parents, and I got a job managing out this way at a bar, and ended up moving out here and buying a house. So that vegetable garden that I grew at my parents' house taught me a lot of skills, man. It wasn't organic. I was using the blue water, whatever. And I was also doing that when I grew that first plant. That first plant I grew, I didn't know how I thought maybe I'll throw some shit from the backyard. I threw some like soil from the backyard in a pot, but I also went to Home Depot and I got whatever, I don't know. It was a high P, whatever had a high P on it. You know what I mean? That's all I knew, run a high P for flour, NPK, run a high P. You know what I mean? For the NPK, run a high
big middle number. Give me that one.
And don't use Miracle Grow. That was my other tip that I had was don't use Miracle Grow.
I thought you were gonna say you grabbed one of Mom's Miracle Grow bags. Yeah, I don't know what this blue water is, but it makes me feel like it's probably a Miracle Grow product.
I grabbed a different blue water. It was just a water soluble nutrient. I can't remember who it was by, but it was in a little green box.
It wasn't a Windex, right? Oh, okay.
No. And I mixed that shit up, and I grew some big fucking tomatoes and big fucking peppers, and I made a shit ton of pickles that year. I probably still have. This is from like 2012, 2013. I probably still have a jar of those pickles or garlic. I jarred up garlic that year. All kinds of shit, man.
Damn, dude, nice. How big of a row were we talking?
It was probably 30 feet, maybe 30 to 50 feet long, and maybe 6 feet wide.
Okay.
And I mean, I fucking went through that. I actually didn't till it. I cut out the sod. It was all grass. It was a grass backyard. So I cut out the sod with a shovel, and then I went through it, and I knew how, because of my research into like growing tomatoes and stuff, was all container shit. So I perlite, peat moss.
Eddie Red says 6x40.
6x40. Okay, so it's 40 feet long. So
I think that's the only thing he's fact checked you on, by the way. I was wondering if he like kind of like knew how much of this he knew was going on.
He already knows where all my stash spots are up in the ceiling. I've been busting so many times, man. Yeah, they've got me.
It's cool. Your pop supports you so much. My mom, she's usually up here in the chat all the time too. Supports me big time. Probably more than anybody in my entire family. Is pretty cool.
It's what keeps me going, man. It really is. It really is the support system. I'm blessed, to say the least. I really am.
That's awesome.
They were they were the type of parents that were real strict with me. I wasn't able to like go to all the parties, or like, you know, I had to be home at certain times, and you know, they were really checking on me if I was staying at people's places, staying the night at places. And don't get me wrong, I had freedoms as a kid and had a lot of fun, but like they were you know, they kept an eye on me, and so be it. I mean, two blocks from my house, a young girl, 14 years old, a friend of mine that I went to high school with, got her throat slit behind a dumpster. You know what I mean? So, and she's still alive to tell the story. So, I mean, that shit happens all over our fucking neighborhood. You know what I mean? So, and I mean, we were on the good side of town, believe we're on the good side of the fucking, you know, the basically just it's a line in the road. You know what I mean? And you cross the line and it's a whole total different fucking neighborhood, you know. Growing up in Westland, the difference between Westland and Norwayne and Wayne and all of these other areas that they have down there in Inkster, and it's right there. There's areas of Inkster that are pretty rough. There's areas of Westland that are pretty, there's areas of Westland that are really nice. And we lived on the nicer, right over by like Westland Malls, kind of where I grew up. And it's a great part of time. I had a great time. You know, it was the type of town I'd ride my bike for miles. You know what I mean? There were shitheads. There were like, you know, it's just like everywhere else, but you learn to mind your own business. I had a great childhood, I feel. And honestly, coming out of it, you know, a lot of my friends went down the path of fentanyl and shit like that. And it's really rough, man, to see, you know, all of, you know, that happened in that side of town. But the way that the cannabis came out, I saw a lot of people getting healed by cannabis over the years, and a lot of people I stayed with cannabis. I never thought of cannabis as another drug, even though people started, you know, really showing addiction, and even though the propaganda was trying to really make it seem like cannabis was one of the players at fault. You know, I just couldn't do it. And I stayed with
the gateway drug, remember?
Yeah. And that was one of those realities that I saw, because I always thought that alcohol, and even coffee, really, I think coffee and some stuff like that is more of a gateway.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking gateway, we're talking what got you into this, right? So you can trace it back until the first fucking buzz you got.
And like I said,
anything,
I was drinking.
That's your gateway drug then. Really, guys?
Feeds my gateway to Twinkies.
Right?
Seriously. You know, seriously.
That's
yeah, exactly. Like Bika right here in chat. This is the one
Sugar.
right there.
Yeah, and I'll get back on here too.
Yeah, Becca's walking around behind him. That's his wife.
Okay, perfect. I mean, that's beautiful.
My wife. She my love.
Hit the nail on the head right there. Seriously, it's exactly what I was getting at.
A partner in crime.
And that's okay. We can sell that by the masses. No problem.
Yeah. The cannabis has had an impact on my life since I was a fucking teenager, man. And so that's why I'm really dedicated to the ethos of it. You know, that includes the culture, the growing, like, and honestly, where cannabis is as an agricultural product, and how it is actually food. And so that portion of my life when I was learning about cannabis, and that portion of my life when I got into growing a garden and making pickles, learning those few life skills, and I call them life skills because those are certainly, even growing cannabis is a life skill. Learning those got me really interested in self-sustainability, like really, because I would get down all these and YouTube wasn't that big at the time, but it was big enough to have some, like John Kohler's show, Growing Your Greens with John Kohler. Shout out to that dude, because I learned more about growing plants and food from that dude. He used it into my cannabis theory than anything, you know. And that dude was just showing people's farms and like just showing different products, and I never really had organic growing down, but I always wanted to be organic. And when I got into growing, when I bought this house and I was able to like grow plants at a larger scale, for me it was a closet now. It wasn't just one plant in an attic. I can grow a closet out. I can grow a bedroom out. I can have a hydro. And I was really into hydroponics. I thought hydroponics, you know, the way of the future, growing plants indoors with water, and all that. And I was kind of I almost had blinders on, thinking that it could all be done at the same time with organics and hydroponics, not really thinking of soil building, not really thinking of biology, but just thinking of clean,
organically sourced inputs, basically.
more like using technology also. Like I really like the technology aspect of hydro, and also the automation. I like the automation,
Yeah.
plug and play, the walk away. I really liked all of that stuff, and being able to like set up a grow and just kind of let it do your own thing. And I always wanted to grow with all these different plants in it. Well, then it wasn't just being a caregiver and growing some plants for some other people. Now all of a sudden we had this commercial opportunity step into play in like 2015, 2016. Started really listening to other professionals talk about cannabis and the way that it was in other areas. You know, prepare for the $500 pound, you know, set up your systems properly, you know, don't sell your intellectual property, you know, watch who you do business with. All of these different cautions, I suppose. I don't want to say fears, but like cautions that, you know, are certainly realities. So, you know, I've definitely been stepped on a few times in the industry. I've been taken advantage of. I've been stolen from, you know, I've been robbed, you know, and people have been robbed on my behalf. I mean, shit, dude, you know, like all kinds of shit. I still think I'm just maybe still broken even, you know, even though I've been doing this shit for, I don't know, a couple decades now. It's crazy to think about. But, you know, getting into it where I really wanted to be sustainable, most importantly, I learned that trying to do it hydro and trying to do it organic, I had some competing variables. I'm going to use that word. I like the word.
He said it, guys. He said it.
Like one of them being, you know, keeping everything clean. Another one being, you know, just I was using Roots Organic and it was really expensive to use their whole line. So, and the other one was just honestly the product that I was putting out here, mind you. I didn't have an air conditioner. I was using HPS. They're really close to there was a ton of other variables putting out shitty weed, but my friends were growing really fucking good weed. And by this time I was a caregiver, and this is 2012. I had gotten my card. Daddy Red, their neighbor, where I grew up, their neighbor had something going on with his eye where he really couldn't see well, and he was having muscle spasms in his eyes, and he really needed purple Kush specifically. All these other strains just wouldn't work for him. He was going to the dispensaries at the time, and you know, he's getting all these other ones, just not working as well. I was able to source Granddaddy Purple through my friends, and they had this GDP, and it worked for this dude. And I grew for him. He was my first patient. He was my patient for like 3 years. I eventually got him a clone of that after I sourced it in like 2015. Kind of like teach a man to fish for the rest of his life. Well, he didn't need me as a patient anymore. He was the first patient that kind of like said, you know, I'm going to leave. And so that opened me up to a whole another batch of possibilities, which was, you know, obviously having other patients and things like that, and other people needing cannabis, but really learning the medical value, not just cannabis, but that specific varietal, and that other varietals make conditions worse, and that there's a polarity there. You know what I mean? And that some people really need a specific strain of cannabis, you know, and that really toned me into like the caregiving side of growing cannabis, and that really tuned me into like the craft side of focusing on varietals, focusing on not just growing weed as an herb or as a ornamental or as even a high THC potent marketing tool, right? But as as a color on the color wheel, like every different varietal, and knowing that as an artist, you don't just pick three colors. You don't just pick three colors. You mix them together. You make other colors, or you buy the other colors that somebody else mixed together.
Well, hey, some people like to do monochromatic type, paintings and colorings. Okay, but everyone's got their style. But clearly you've grown quite a few varietals, and I want to call them. I'll call it strains, because sometimes we do pheno hunts, so we pop full packs of seeds, and maybe we grow them all the way out. Maybe some of them are males. We kick them to the curb. How many different strains do you think you've grown over your, like you said, about a decade or so of like seriously growing? And how many are you operating with right now?
Not that many, honestly. I would say that I'm in the range probably between 50 and 100. I'd have to probably say between
that you've grown,
maybe in like the 60 to 80 range, somewhere in there. More keep popping into my head as I say.
I know it's so hard to quantify this.
I want to say less than 100 different like varietals. It hasn't been that many. When I first started out, it was oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Superior.
Oh no, I was trying to quantify it too in my head. I don't know, but 100. Yeah, just thinking back, 100 sounds right.
Like 100 sounds like a lot.
It does, but it also sounds.
I feel like I've definitely had my hands on 100 packs of seeds, and between seeds and clones, for sure that many. I just don't think I've popped them all.
But
my
then I think back, like I've had
story. But the varietal, like in the beginning, I was going through some stuff, trying to find stuff that would work. I was trying to find stuff that my patients, that I really liked, and I was also trying to find stuff that would work for a couple of my patients that I had at the time. And then so where I'm at regionally in Michigan, there's dispensaries everywhere, and there has been since like 2008. Honestly, been here forever. And I mean, the very first dispensary in Michigan is 2 miles from my house. So dispensaries have been surrounding me forever. And maybe it's 4 miles from my house or something like that, but it's right up the fucking road. And that's a roach. I'm trying to figure out that shit distracting me everywhere. So the marketability of cannabis has always been difficult. There's always been good caregiver weed in these dispensaries. There's always been low prices also. So
it's competitive for sure. I mean, it's only getting more so, but
and so when I first started, actually, I was more or less, middlemaning product from other caregivers as a caregiver for my patients until I started getting my crops kind of up and running here, which was a great thing that we could do at the time. At the beginning of the Michigan program, you could, I think until like 2014 or 15, where they really changed patient to patient laws, where they had these patients could sort of swap product. And what's nice about the patient caregiver laws in Michigan is, as a patient or caregiver that grows for somebody else, you're allowed to get recuperated, on the spendings that you use for, whatever your time costs, whatever your electrical costs, all this costs that go into it, you're allowed to charge for those things. And that's been a great almost advantage as small business, cannabis business entrepreneurs, for the caregivers to be able to get their overages to other patients. And there was a time where overages were a thing. And now the overages, that kind of went away in 2014, 2015 again. Gray areas kept things working. Then we had legal recreational come through, and as a consultant, we can work for our time, and we're allowed to gift cannabis to anybody over 21. So the business models have all kind of changed over the years, but the value of the plant, the care in caregive, it all remains. The craft remains, the focus and attention on single varietals. As of today, I only work with, how many varietals do we have? I'd say there's 12 varietals in our shop right now. I've been with those same 12 varietals for the last, I think, 3 years. I might have we called one or two last year, so we had quite a few more. But I really haven't popped seeds in like 3 years. It's been a while since I did Rainbow Driver, Strawberries and Cream, and a couple of those other ones. And I've held on to those for a while. I did the hunting on Rainbow and Strawberries, but a lot of the other genetics that I do hold have been gifts, or, you know, some of them were sourced through dispensaries, but a lot of them were gifts through close friends. I hold that Granddaddy Purple still, and I was able to get it from my friend. Now, originally, my friend had told me that he grows with Flora and Nova and GH, and that's what I originally started hydro after I was growing with Roots Organics, until my other friend, who's a little bit more business savvy, and was kind of like friends of all of us in the circle, told me, he said, actually, they're using Jax, and you should use Jax as hydro. And I really was organic. I really wanted to do organic, but also, again, listen to everybody's information online, listening to, you know, all the podcasts, you know, Kiss Organic, like listen to I was listening to everybody, Shango Low. So listen to, I really have shot at the GrowTube, because coming up, I learned a shit ton on the GrowTube. And so, you know, for Groli, Pedro, you guys were a big part of that show back in the day. And, you know, before the YouTube crash and a lot of the information got taken away. I mean, I'd be sitting there trimming or just working on my grow room or building a grow room or something and listening to that. You guys taught me a ton of information. And I was actually working with, and one of the big reasons I really enjoyed the GrowTube was because the information was great, but you had a lot of guys in different aspects of the industry, you know, lighting experts, hydroponic experts, soil guys. Pedro, you know, you work organic, and then like Green Jeans,
breeders, and
hydro, and then Vader, and then for Groli, you did the hydrocarbon, and Pedro, you did rosin, and at the time washing hash, and so all of these different theories coming together, and to not really pick a single like dogma, right? Or to not be dogmatic about maybe one style, and to maybe be open-minded about many different styles. But one of the other things was I was also growing with Jax, and there was somebody on the panel that grew with Jack. Green Jeans grew with Jax. So I was able to get a lot of good information from how he did his. And it was from that show that I actually started using magnesium sulfate. I used to only use Jax with as a 2-part. I just ran the 3 and the 2. I never did 3. I never knew what 3-2-1 was. I just ran Jax. I fucking ran Jax because I've been running Jax for fucking years, you know, and all of a sudden Jax 3-2-1 is a new term for me. So I started running Jax 3-2-1. I had great fucking results, better results. Start paying attention to my pH, you know, things like that. At the time, I was just letting it buffer, let it do its thing. So that show, I really think to a lot of progress. As far
still
as
using Jax right now?
I still use Jax indoor.
Are you hydro? Or are you, what kind of media?
Indoor hydro. I run a cocoa media. I've gone through different types of cocoa. I've gone with cocoa without perlite. I used to use just canna. Then there was a heavy metal scare here in Michigan in like, I don't know, 2019, something like that. There was
a little before that, maybe 17, 18.
And so I kind of stopped using canna because I was trying to get into metric, and I was trying to get everything dialed in, get all my ducks in a row, including being able to support a $500 pound if necessary. And that's one of the main reasons that I was learning hydro. I was learning to produce a low cost, high value product that I could stand behind. And
it's hard to beat that price of Jax in a 25-pound bag.
last summer I spent $500. I'm up to my elbows in Jax. I will have fertilizer on my grow.
Like 10 years of freaking Jax.
Dude, I'm not kidding you. We've gone through 1 bag of fertilizer, 1 bag of cal nitrate. I bought 6 and 3. I bought 6 and 3. Yeah.
At least you got them in the right ratios, though, right?
I'm in the right ratio. Yeah. So I bought like
my problem. My first order was 25-pound bags.
Fuck, dude.
And you run out of that first part, and you're like, oh
yeah,
shit.
Yeah. And
then
yep. Yeah, so I bought 3 bags and 2, and then I was like, you know what? I got these for like a couple $100. Yeah, right. And at the time, and here's the part: it was last summer was when the fertilizer price hike was happening, right? And all the farmers were going on strike, and all the shit was happening, and shit was hitting the fan. So I was going, you know what? This fertilizer is going to double in price. I better jump now. And it was on sale at the time. Grow Green had a sale, so I just bought a little bit of it, and now I'm kind of stuck with it for a little while. But it's a low cost, so I mean, I'm able to grow it pennies on a dollar. Now I do run cocoa. My biggest cost is, I think we figured out to be like, it's like $3 a plant in cocoa. Well, the biggest cost is electricity. I still run HPS, so air conditioning, lighting.
Ooh. When are you gonna make that jump, dude?
As soon as we have financing available.
Yeah.
But anyways, the because it's more than just getting the lights. We have to reconfigure some or get the lights and a controller, and you know what I mean. There's just some other stuff. So anyways, the where was I going with that?
So you're $3 cocoa, electricity is the most expensive part.
Electricity is the most expensive.
Jax is obviously super cheap.
Jax is super cheap.
You run in like price scrog netting, stuff like that. Nothing
We run Scrognet. We 5-ton air conditioner, CO2, natural gas CO2, sealed room, completely sealed rooms. In 2015, we purchased a 3,200 square foot warehouse, commercial. We were assuming that we would be able to get an operator's permit, being the way that the MMMA was written. It wouldn't be an issue. The township would have our backs. We'd be able to operate and sell to the dispensaries. In 2016, while I'm building these grow rooms, the MRTMA, MMFLA, Michigan Medical Facility Licensing Act, gets adopted through the state. The state legislature in 2016 adopted a licensing commercial program for medical, not for caregivers, not for anything like that. You had to get township approval. You had to get an operator's permit and township approval. Then you had to pay township fees. Then you had to get a state license. Then you had to get metric. You had to run through transport. You had to do the whole. It was a they knew that recreational was coming, basically, because the wall was being built around the grassroots effort to getting it on the ballot, which eventually it did in 2018 and got passed. But the wall was being built, right? And the
Sorry, that got me.
I know I've seen Constant Evolution say, "I can talk." You if you've ever seen him on the Michigan Bros Grocery, I can talk.
No.
So the our township says no to that. So we have this facility. I'm in the middle of a build out. We're still able to sell to dispensaries. They're actually now allowing dispensaries to purchase from caregivers. And we're just kind of in this purgatory for the time being. And then recreational dropped in 2018. Our township still said no to that option. And we have just been kind of riding the rails where we were at. So not really wanting to expand that as far as cannabis goes, because we don't really have township approval and we don't want to get backtracked by the township. We're going to owe them fines and stuff because we didn't pull permits. So there's all those hurdles. And then our township, we tried working with the township and they don't want to adopt it. And so there's going to need to be, township business going on. So we have been doing the discretion, writing the caregiver consultation, marketplace thing as caregivers for the last couple of years professionally. Also, I'm a wedding DJ professionally. And so that is, there really to help support our income. Otherwise, caregiving is our primary income. Cannabis has been our primary source of sustainability. And in the last couple of years, because sustainability is so important, my end goal has always been a farm, a vegetable farm. And cannabis has always been my idea as being a great bridge to kind of bridge the gap for that. And so that's really what I've been trying to utilize is cannabis as this great stepping stone because it helps so many people. And then it also bridges the gap into the food because food is also medicine, and health and wellness, and it's all combined as this holistic approach, as cannabis being an agricultural commodity. So I met Becca in 2021 in March, and her and I have just been, going tag teaming the caregiving thing. She became a caregiver around the same just after we met. She kind of learned the trade. We met. She worked in cannabis. We were both working conventionally. I was working at a dispensary, and she was working as a sales rep. And she came in, and we met, went out on a date, and now we're married.
Was it love at first sight? Did you guys like lock eyes? What happened?
It was only eyes because we had masks on. It was COVID.
Oh yeah,
So we could only see eyes. And yeah, man, honestly, it was great. We went on a date, and that was the first time I actually got to see her face. So it was kind of like a blind date. We met each other, but didn't see each other. And yeah, we wed, and now we are life partners, business partners. She's definitely the second half, the better half to. We wed. She's laughing. We got the Red Setter Farm thing dialed in now. We really love the marketplace that Michigan has. We love the promoters, the event space. We love the quality. We love the craft. And we grow organically outdoors, so we don't have to get into that yet. So
well, this is perfect timing. We're 1 hour in. You mentioned the DJ thing. I don't think you need to necessarily plug that, but with the events coming up, in which both you and I will be vending at this weekend, why don't you go ahead and plug where you're at on Instagram, what your kind of events you're doing, and then we'll keep rolling.
The events that we are primarily doing are the Third Eye Craft Affair, and you can get that information from what information that I got. Instagram is mostly it's actually on Discord, and you can find some Reddit links on Michigents. I keep getting those mixed up, but either way, if you're on Instagram, Third Eye Muse and Third Eye Craft Affair runs a market at the Fledge in Lansing just about every other week. There's been a couple weeks off. There's been a couple months here and there taken off, but consistently in the wintertime, it's just about every other week. And right now, this week, it's on a Sunday, 11 to 5 p.m. And some of the past weeks, it's been on Saturdays, noon to 6. So my story, for Growley's story, usually always posting about it. Definitely Third Eye Craft Affair. You will always find that information. What's really nice is that you get discounts on entry fees if you bring clothing, canned food. I'll talk about the Fledge a little bit, the location that most of these events are located at. It's kind of a little community center. There's substance abuse awareness. There's a small shelter on really, really cold nights if necessary. There's a food pantry, a clothing closet. There's a garden, hydroponics. They got all kinds of stuff going on in there. They've even got
They have chickens now.
They have chickens running around outside.
Yeah. They it's crazy how like they stick around there, dude.
Yeah. Permaculture.
It's in downtown Lansing. It's not like yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like what would be, now I know it's on the other side of the town and it's not student ghetto area, but it kind of reminds me of like what would be like
there's lots of student housing.
Yeah, like student housing, like there's a random community center, but it's not student area community center. It's closer to the Capitol area.
Yeah. You peek around the corner, you see the Capitol building.
Yeah. right on Michigan Ave.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great one. And then summertime events, we really enjoy doing events at Sarnes Resort with Gems and Genetics and whatever other events that they host. We try to do events with those guys. And then with the other venture, we're really trying to get our food service kicked off. We really want to diversify. Want to expand, and it's difficult to expand in the cannabis space right now. Our township's not doing the licensing thing or anything. So the next best place to expand is into the food space. And so that's kind of what we're doing. We already have all of the equipment. We already have the skills. We already have the know-how. Next best thing is get yourself some seeds. So we stocked up on a whole bunch of seeds. We got
Love Johnny's.
a little box of seeds right here from Johnny.
Yeah, nice and full.
I got dirty soil blockers right here. Just did some soil blocks tonight. Gotta clean those up. But yeah, this is here. Some more Johnny's lettuce packs. We like Johnny's for like production stuff. And then we like Baker Creek. Baker Creek's got good stuff. And then locally we like MI Gardener.
Mm-hmm. He's awesome.
He's got really, really good stuff. We would like to get where our warehouse is, where we grow, that we have a little bit of proper small acreage, like less than 2 acres, but nonetheless enough property to have a small garden, a small market garden. So that's kind of what we're working towards. We would like to eventually get it certified organic. We'll see how that rolls out, but definitely working with organic standards and practices right now, including even trying to source what seed we can. Fortunately, Johnny's has organic seed. It's not much more expensive. So we're sourcing the seed if we're able through that. We're going to document, log everything.
Because it's got to be like a certain number of years you have to grow like that before you certify or something, right?
3 years of not spraying anything on the property, and I believe 3 years of monitoring. Honestly, I have the last 3 years monitored and logged if I have to, because I haven't done anything to that side of the property. I haven't done shit. So I've only mowed the grass. And that's it. I haven't sprayed anything. I haven't touched it with any. I haven't even put I haven't sprayed beehives or anything. So I'll talk to an extension. I'll call the ags. The thing is expensive. It's like 10 grand. We don't have the capital right now. So it's definitely a future investment, but to prepare, right, to get the garden started. I mean, just preparing land and soil alone is going to take the better part of a year, if not years. So we get it at least started, get, infrastructure, fencing, there's deer, gotta get everything taken care of. So we expect it to take a couple years to get up and running, but it's a learning curve also, trying to grow at scale, because right now we do backyard gardening, backyard farming, we have cannabis mixed in. It's more permaculture and food forest right now, where we just let shit grow wild. We just let radishes fucking come up everywhere because I love them botanically. I think that they're a beautiful flower, and I enjoy eating radish pods. And
that's my style up here too. We're just
growing shit
everywhere. We got land, just let everything grow.
Yeah. And it was their backdrop to their wedding. It was really cool.
This past year, we put a lot of focus in the design as far as it being a backdrop to our wedding. Yeah, we got married in our wedding. We got married in our backyard this year, and it was we really got to learn how to grow flowers. This, I always grow some medicinals, herbs, stuff like that. But this year we really got into flower production. Like Becca grew dahlias and snapdragons, chamomile. And speaking of chamomile, we took a ton of herbs, and we're still having tea every night out of our garden. So, I mean, the food ran out. We have tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce, and shit. That's all 100% out of our garden. So we got 52 jars. We made 52 pints of spaghetti sauce this year, one for every week of the year.
Nice.
And it's food, right? It's nourishment, etc. But I'm a little bit woo-woo. It's my connection to the garden. You know what I mean? It's our connection to the soil. In Michigan, in the ground freezes, and this death comes, of winter. It's our winter reset. I try not to look at it as a bad view of death coming, because it's beautiful in the spring when it resets. It's nature's way of resetting itself. And for me to be able to stay in tune with it in the wintertime, in that sunless, dreary season, stay connected to the garden through your harvest. So even when the sauce and the food runs out, we have the teas, we have the botanicals. We grow a little bit of everything. I love permaculture. I love permaculture design. We really want to implement all of that kind of stuff, ecological systems into our farm. I love closing loops and just really trying to not bring in inputs. Before the pandemic happened, one of my goals was to really close loops, not to be relied on the supply chain. And then the pandemic happened, and we couldn't find toilet paper, and it was crazy. And I was like, well, the supply chain does have error. Like can be issues in supply chain. So if I am very reliant on something from a store, that is that's a sliver of fragility, and if I want to add a little bit of anti-fragility to my systems, just try to close some loops and try to do things as best like that's kind of where the soil blocker comes in, just one of these tools like this. And now we don't rely on plastic seed trays, we don't rely on seed pods, we don't rely on root riot cubes.
Depends on how far it gets, Red, because from what I hear, all you need is salt and bullets. Hey, I got a burning question for you. Can you define hash for us? I see you in chat all the time. I know you know this is coming.
Hashish. Hash or hashish? Hash. Okay, yeah. So hash, I believe, is a modern version of what is hashish. But I believe that the modern version of hash encompasses extracts of cannabis, whereas an original, let's say traditional hashish terminology may encompass the living glands, potentially hand rubbed, living off of the plant, or potentially sieved mechanically. Whereas the modern day, and you know what, even then they would probably have some sort of solvent tincture or something. I don't know if they would necessarily consider that hashish, but yeah, I would say that as a modern definition of it, it would just be plant extract in a kind of smokable specific form. Whether that's a dab, whether that's something that you're going to put in your joint or something like that. Now, hashish, you can eat hash, hash eaters for centuries.
How does that affect the color of your teeth?
It's definitely going to make them stick together a little bit.
Depends on if you chew or if you swallow.
Feel of wax.
What if you put it in your lip like a dip?
Clip that.
Like, I would consider RSO as a form of hash in a modern definition. I would consider BHO a form of hash in a modern definition.
My rosin oil.
Yeah, rosin oil, any of that stuff. Hash oil, in all of those, I don't think viscosity really matters as long as it's from the extracted glands of the cannabis plant, for that matter. And I mean, you can have hashes of all kinds of pollens, right? You can have pollen hash of many different botanical plants make terpenes. Hops, has the cousin of cannabis, has their terpenes. You can make
all right. You want to talk terpenes? Why don't you tell us about your favorite terpenes and your favorite cannabinoids? Because I mean, everyone knows about THC. It's the one that gets you high, and then all of a sudden CBD comes around. You start seeing that in like gas stations and stuff. And now we got all these other ones that we've talked about and just explored and discovered over and over again. It seems like between that and terpenes, and if you don't have to give us specific terpenes, but maybe terpene profiles. Like what do you like?
As far as cannabinoids go, I'm not well versed in the like newer minor cannabinoids.
There's so many. There's so many.
The new one, the THC 10 or whatever that fucker one is, and then they're
starting to sound like Terminator names,
Yeah, so I don't know. They're all there. I've been smoking many varieties of cannabis over the years. I'm sure I've had a couple of them. But either way, my favorite range of cannabis, this is from getting products tested at the lab, is in the range of about 20 to 22%. 22. I'm going to go 22 to 25%. I really like Death Star. That one really tests out around 25%. So 22 to 25%. Granddaddy Purple never really hit the 20% mark, but it would always slap me in the face. But something else about that one maybe not like it. It wasn't that it wasn't potent. It was just that it maybe like provoked thought a little bit too much. It's just a little bit too scary of weed. So like I was never really turned on by an inflated THC value. I never really took that into consideration. So THC is definitely not my favorite cannabinoid. I really do enjoy CBD. I like having a CBD tincture. One of the reasons I'm probably so unstoppable with the speech and blabbing so much, I haven't had CBD oil in a while. So I am probably just a little more nervous than usual. And when I'm nervous, I talk a lot. So that just goes hand in hand. There's we have been using CBG in our CBD. I do like that. I don't think I've noticed an effective dose, or I don't think I've noticed like effectivity from dosing from it, but I also haven't dosed much of it. Limited dosing. So
it seems to go hand in hand with specific terpenes a lot in my experience in lab testing. And so I'm wondering if it's like, if that's the modulator, right? Or the terpenes are the modulator, or maybe the combination of them are the modulator, because it always seems like those hazy type varieties, terpenoline or whatever.
That's interesting to say hazy type varieties, because those ones usually take a much longer, they have a longer growing time. And
so if you're harvesting earlier than that, maybe 11 weeks or something.
You don't take it 15 weeks. Maybe it needs 15 weeks. You're only taking it 11 weeks, and you are getting more CBG because of that. Because my understanding, CBG is a precursor to CBD and THC, and so it kind of goes through this phase as the flower produces, where it's high in CBG, and then they convert into those other cannabinoids before converting to CBN, and then degrading much longer down the line. I think one of my favorite aspects of the plant itself is how long it actually takes for the cannabinoids to degrade. Because they don't really degrade right away. You can literally leave them in the sun for a year and the cannabinoids will linger. The terpenes might be shot, but the resins will just like glass up on the plant and, make a different product. Maybe a year is a little bit over.
Yeah, I don't know about in the sun for a year, but lack of oxidation, if you can seal it up and keep it maybe in a cool, dark place.
There's even ways of curing and drying that were poor cure. Like if you think of like the way that they dry some things around the world, they field dry many crops around the world. And we know that doesn't do the best for phytonutrition preservation, but it does things to aid in the quality of the, and actually kind of like what we adapt to also. Off topic ever so slightly, but a good example of that is the wheat grain. The way that it used to be harvested in prior to the conventional sickle, prior to the conventional reaper and the conventional silo, where wheat is dried almost immediately as it's taken off of the field and taken off the field heat. It's dried and it's no longer left in the field. Now, prior to the reaper, prior to the silo, we would harvest wheat and grain and we would leave it in the field to dry. And, you'd bundle it up and you'd stack it out. You've seen those pictures of the wheat stacked out in the field, and it would dry during the day, but at nighttime the dew would set and it would get a little wet. So it would go through these wet, dry periods. And over time, over the, the course of however long it's taken to dry in the field, it would ferment a little bit. And during that fermentation, the gluten enzymes would actually be, I don't know if deactivate is the right word, but I'm going to explain it as it becomes deactivated, as far as it not being responsible for interrupting the human digestive system when consumed. So what happened in the modern day is we harvest the wheat. The wheat does not ferment in the field. It's almost like fresh frozen. It gets preserved, which is great. We restore the phytonutrition, but in that same sense, we actually reduce the ability for us to digest it, because we've adapted to that one method of agriculture for so long. as far as human. I mean, we've been on the earth for how many millennia, and we've adapted with agriculture and the ways of doing and even ingesting certain bacteria based on the ways that we do our agriculture, and cannabis being one of those forms of agriculture, cannabinoids. And I'm one of those people who believes in coevolution with cannabis. We have an endocannabinoid system because we have used cannabis as a food source, or our animals that we consume have used cannabis as a food source. I think it's fascinating thinking of the history or anthropology of it, but I like full profile CBD, a little bit of everything. We're breeding to have a little bit of CBD and some stock, full spectrum.
That's fair.
Cannabis is broad spectrum at best.
That's fair. Do you have a favorite piece of glass that you smoke? So I know you're a huge a joint smoker. I think you've rolled one or two on the show, or at least started rolling one. I noticed.
Yeah, my weed's so far away, I have to go gadget arm and get it, and the gadget arm's not working at the moment. So
I didn't know if it was close or not, but I was. Do you have the hash dome? Oh, there you go.
Oh, I think so.
I wanted you to show. So this is definitely a different type of glass, Pedro.
Hey.
But I'm curious to hear what Pedro's take is on this, and I have to imagine he's familiar with this.
Apple?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Would you say the hash apple? No, not like in the shape of an apple. If that's what you're saying.
No.
You got it.
That's
just the dome.
Yeah.
It has hash on it. It might be this piece of full melt that
Yeah, the one that was like melted off. Have you ever seen one of those, Pedro?
We actually got it. There we go.
Hey, he's got his
that's nice.
Is that where you put the hash on the pin on the inside there?
Yeah.
Gold leaf banding, and then the hash goes on the nail there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you light that fucker up, and then it might be broken.
Pedro, I want your take on this. I'll be right back.
You know my take on the little piece there. I mean,
the little piece of glass.
It's definitely an old school way of consumption for sure. You think of, I mean, if we think of what you were saying, they're talking about the endocannabinoid system, having developed over the millennia. How do you think we smoked it? Do you think we put it in a 10 millimeter dab rig and heated it up with a blazer torch? And no, we didn't do that. We probably, most likely, we started probably putting it, like you said, on little nails, potentially mixing it with our tobacco when we consume the tobacco in ritualistic fashion, but no, I mean, that's a great way to do it. That to me would be a little more of a meditation kind of consumption, where it would be literally burning as an incense around you, not necessarily consumed directly, in the sense of an actual device where you're,
It's nice that you can pass it though too. You can get a good chunk on there, get it burning.
I know what's cool about this is,
but I mean, if you think about a ritual where you're all, perhaps sitting inside a domed, like a tent or something, and you've got 8, 10, or 12 of those sitting around the room just burning off, I mean, that would be a definitely an easy way to consume and an easy way to make it a ritualistic kind of session.
There was I was fortunate to be able to take a vacation to Beijing when I was young. I was like 13 years old, and it was actually around the time I was just getting into cannabis. And I went into what's known as the Lama temples. And you go through a temple, and as you progress, there's Buddhas, and the Buddhas get bigger, and there's more Buddhas in the temples. And the last temple, there's a 50-foot Buddha, and there's Buddhas everywhere. And in every temple, you can smell the opium burning in these places. is. You know, it's a very familiar smell, this raw opium that burns. And it's not like they're there smoking opium. It's just burning as
It's
incense.
just burning as an incense. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's in the air, and you know, and you feel calm being in that place, you know, and you feel the Buddha there, man. You really do.
And you know, like I said, you know, burning 10 or 12 of those sitting around a room or whatnot, yeah, it would definitely affect the mind, right? It would definitely put you in a certain place for sure.
I would imagine those would be the first types of encounter. Well, I'd say first encounters with cannabis is probably some form of eating it.
I would assume so.
The seeds are
chew it.
nut, and they're very hardy for us. They're very hardy. I believe we can survive because the omega content of cannabis hemp seed has high omega, not just 3 like most nut, or not just 6 like most nuts, but high in 3. It's balanced, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And calories do so much for us, but it's really the omega fatty acids that sustain us and keep us healthy and prolong our life. And that alone can sustain us, which is an amazing thing. Not to mention the leaves with the phytonutrition, fiber, things like that. But excuse me, think of calcium. Cannabis is the high calcium uptaking plant. And
that right there is why I like a rig.
Oh yeah, the blast your lungs out.
The dry, direct, stale hit
that it avoids, that you don't
that
rig.
Yeah, when you smoke out of a rig.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's old school, and everybody has their old school ways, you know, and everybody appreciates their old school things. I even have some old school things back here, but that's just speaking of that. You know, do you that was going to lead me to my next question is, do you consume, obviously we saw you consuming flour, we've seen you consuming some hash there. Do you consume, you know, of course now your definition includes it in hash, but do you consume rosin or any type of BHO or anything?
Yeah, totally. Now, I'm usually not the one to fire up the torch. Becca's usually the one to fire up the torch and clean out the rig. I enjoy dabs. I enjoy like flavorful extracts. I really enjoy what Frugoli makes, and he makes really good high terpene extracts. Now, I'm not one to make that my primary source of consumption. That for many reasons. I won't even get into the reasons, but for many of them, whether it's hydrocarbon, whether it's rosin, any of them, I do prefer flour. For I think just the full plant profile, even though I'm smoking some plant matter. I was a cigarette smoker for many years, and something about the harshness of the smoke allows me to really just take it all in, you know, even if it gives me the gurgly coughs or something like that. It's part of the experience, I guess. From
gotta cough to get off, as they say.
That's probably one of the best explanations I've ever heard of actually why you want to smoke.
Well, I do. I enjoy
flower. Excuse me.
I enjoy
you know, because I've heard the full spectrum, you know, and I've even claimed full spectrum for a long time, you know, and that's why, you know, wash 45 to 159 or 73 to 159, but acknowledging that you're actually smoking the plant matter and that it's actually fucking with your lungs and everything, and acknowledging that that's part of the experience is probably one of the best explanations I've ever heard.
And I was a cigarette smoker for a long time.
As was I.
Habitually, it's there a little bit. And the big one is I do enjoy smoking primarily joints because of that old cigarette habit. So I enjoy rolling. Yep. And again, part of the experience, I enjoy rolling one up. You know,
I really fucking hate rolling them up. I am not a joint roller.
Pedro and I are similar in that regard.
Whenever I rolled a joint, I have a box of joints up here, and right in the box of joints is a joint roller. I cannot do it without. I'm sorry, I've tried. Everybody's like,
joint roller, or I'll use it.
Just sit down and just do it. I'm like, yeah, I'm done.
What's funny is I can't use a joint roller. I
Oh,
get
dude.
them and they're good all over the fucking place. I'm like, fuck.
So quick, dude. I can sit down and just roll 10 of them, fucking rip it up. Oh, it's so quick. But I'm not a real big joint smoker. When I smoke joints is when I'll when I'm going. Number one, if I want to smoke flower for the ease of it and whatnot, and sometimes I'll kind of flip back and forth just a little bit. But when I'm going out and doing something, the fishing, not necessarily the hunting, because hunting I like dabs because we're talking about smell.
Yeah.
But
I like a joint if I'm in the boat. tossing
Yeah.
them out.
absolutely. We used to take a lot of.
Puffco's fit in a boat cup holder.
We used to take trips long before Puffco was ever even thought of, and we would roll like 1 gallon baggies of joints, and just take a shitload of joints with us already pre-rolled, and we know that we've got 9 fucking days, and there's 4 of us. Do the goddamn math.
Did you do the sandwich, like 1 sandwich Ziploc per day, and then there was 9 of those in 1 gallon Ziploc?
We did a pretty good job of
ration them.
Next time you come up for Growly,
job of just taking.
we'll take the razor out, and you put your Puffco in the cup holder. We'll see how long that sucker stays there.
I think I'll just hold on to it while you drive.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
feed you. I mean,
I have taken a dab rig on some crazy fucking mountain 4-wheeling
Yeah, you
trails.
posted some photos on top of mountains from the 4-wheeler.
Yeah, dabbing.
Beautiful rig on a rock.
Yep, exactly. Taking, and I'm not afraid.
So
I'll take a fucking $4,000 rig out there just because, just because I want that picture on that rock.
We did take the Dr. Dabber to the Rockies with us. That was an easy one.
I'm a big fan of getting out of the nature. And, it's kind of funny because I always said back in the day, I literally said that art has no place in humanity whatsoever. There's no value to art in humanity. I've been caught saying that. And, it's been a complete
Mr. Gallery
turnaround.
owner over here.
Yeah, it's been a complete turnaround. And I don't know exactly what that switch was, but that was what was kind of what we were getting at with your glass and with what you consume and whatnot.
I love that part of the industry. It's funny because there's almost I don't want it to be a lost art. Like
sure.
I see. Okay, I was just gonna bring up vape pens because you brought up hunting. I was like, vape pens are really convenient for hunting. Just keep. You got all this gear. I crack a jar in the middle of the woods, and I'm like, oh my god, they're gonna come flying.
This is convenient when hunting. You just take your rosin, you decarb it, 50-50. And we're talking about medicine here, right? So there's multiple ways of consuming it. Who says that we're out on the trail when we're hunting and we're out that we have to be smoking it?
Right.
Or
vaping it. Yeah.
Always put it in your body.
Could always boof it.
Well, I guess we could.
Yeah, oil.
But anyways, go back to the vaping and whatnot. You were saying.
Well. What was I saying about that?
I don't know.
I don't know. I was trying to keep up with Dad.
Excuse me.
I think we're out now.
Yeah,
I like dabs for very specific times. I guess is what I'm saying. They're very circumstantial. Specifically if we're out and about, or you need it to be a little less stinky. But I do like the flavor in the dabs. For me, I don't feel like I get more of an effect from dabs. I don't know if that's a endocannabinoid system being saturated all the time type of a thing. I get a flavor thing, I get an effect thing, but I usually just smoke a joint after, and I don't know if I even feel the joint either.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's probably a little bit preference, and dabbing is my 99% dab, and then once in a while I'll smoke some flower. You guys saw me smoking a joint a couple of days ago, as a matter of fact. I will agree with you that, and I've said it hundreds of times probably on podcasts and whatnot live. When I go from my dabs, when I go from smoking rosin to smoking a joint or smoking a bowl, it's like, whoa, back up, hang on.
Yeah.
Pass me this time, because it gets me. But I do think that, and I'm lucky to have a very large selection of different cannabinoids and terpenes in different strains of rosin. So if I'm feeling like just burnt out, I'll just switch jars,
That's the big thing.
or I'll consume, and I consume, different. I'll consume obviously the same way by just swallowing it, but I'll consume different methods of extraction of cannabis as well.
Yeah.
I'm always medicated.
What I heard
Absolutely
is
always medicated.
I've heard that you're not building a tolerance to specifically THC. You're building a tolerance to a profile that's including,
Yeah, totally.
it's including terpenes and everything else in there. And if you can just switch up that profile, your tolerance in a sense resets. You might not need the THC, but you might be getting some other stuff that you weren't getting. And it's gonna change the entourage effect ever so slightly.
I love like you were saying, the full spectrum. So that jar that you saw there is just a bunch of different food. Unfortunately it's food grade. It's somewhat of 73 to 159. For the most part, it's 45 to 72 micron, but it's not one specific cultivar in there.
It's a little bit runny. Is that
it's 50 50. Well, it's decarb number one, and then it's 50-50 coconut oil.
So coconut oil. Okay.
Yep. And that's just why I've found that, and maybe it's just me, but I found that if I take a gram of even RSO or a gram of that without the coconut oil, and then I take a gram, but 50% coconut oil, 50% rosin, I will get much higher with the mix. And that's obviously because of the bonding agent.
Yeah.
But it's just a way of, you can go to dispensaries here in Colorado, and everybody gets a gram of RSO, and then they try to just take a little piece of it and rub it on their gums. And I'm like, man, why don't you just get some coconut oil and some coconut oil, warm that shit up, stir it up, and then you've got a bunch of it. You can put it in a pill. You can start baking with it. I mean, there's lots of different ways of consumption that we can talk about besides just smoking it.
It's a lot easier to dose for people who like the people who are like, well, I took some of that RSO and I don't think I want to take it anymore. But like some people like a half a grain of rice is still too much, and it's like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Piece it down into a carrier and then low dose it, because it's potent stuff.
I just talked to someone that found out recently that their dose was 2.5 milligrams.
Oh wow. And see, I would much rather you mix, dilute it as much as possible, and then have to take 5 or 10 caps than I would to have you get overly fucked up the first time.
For sure.
It just I really get scared when we start talking about concentrates and first timers. There's always that little bit of a giggle, like it's gonna fuck them up, but in reality, if it's a first timer and you're going in on a dose that's highly not recommended and given to somebody that's uneducated, man, it can be a really bad experience. And then you've just turned that person off to cannabis, and then who are they turning off then? I mean, you kind of start a little bit of a ripple effect. So being educated and being responsible about it, it's part of our responsibility, I guess.
I agree. I've always wanted to allow people to enjoy it. I think that there's been so much misinformation, not just misinformation, but just bad information. And people have bad experiences for other reasons too, just bad weed. And I don't mean poorly grown weed, but like what was the shit back in the day with the paraquat in it? I mean, that could have had some effects on people. There most certainly was, and I'm not talking about propaganda. Like there was certainly a time frame where PCP was a very popular additive for a lot of things, including boofer. I mean, boofer sticks were popular. That was a thing. Boofer sticks were a thing. I bring up the PCP and weed thing, and a lot of people think that is like a propaganda through the news thing, but no, like there was a lot of PCP in weed. It wasn't like people were putting PCP in their own weed. It wasn't like they were dosing; they were putting it in their own weed. And so it was like dipping cigarettes in ether, like that type of a thing. And so people would smoke weed and get freaked the fuck out, and I mean, ever so right. One of the experiences that I had smoking weed, specifically in Florida with my cousin, I've never been so fucking high in my life, man. Ever. And I've always been trying to find a strain of weed that would get me that high. And it had to have been some shit in that weed. I've never gotten there. You know what I mean? Tried my whole life. I've been smoking, growing, finding nothing. You know what I mean? And it was something in that weed that it was much more different. And it was just
apparently something you liked.
Just so happened, I thought I did at least. So just so happened to be that same time frame, same area, that Tampa area, that was a high PCP. I don't know what it was.
Infestation.
Yeah, flood or whatever, whatever was going on there at the time, whatever was going on. And but anyways, people get that dose and it freaks them out. That's weed. That wasn't weed. That was somebody's shitty version of, a drug, whatever. And nowadays you have not in a legal state. Before Michigan was legal, what was it? Is it K2 and the synthetic weed shit? That stuff was pretty popular. Spice and all that stuff.
I was addicted to that shit one time.
Were you? Yeah.
Yes.
And a lot
horribly, of actually horribly.
They're research chemicals, and it's just sprayed on like potpourri or sprayed on mint or whatever the fuck they want to spray a water.
To this day, that little blue fucking flower. What is it? That little that they put in potpourri. It's a little or purple little flower. It's I can't think of what the hell the name of it is, but I can't stand smell. Is it lavender? No,
little lavender.
Yeah, but the potpourri and stuff, I just can't really stand the smell of it because it just gets me that. Yeah, I was trying to smoke. I was trying to get a job back in Wisconsin. I couldn't tell you where now, but I was trying to get a job. Actually, it may have been the job that eventually got me into Colorado. But I started smoking this instead of cannabis because you couldn't test for it. Got you about the same high,
Right.
And then they started outlawing the chemical, so they'd change it, and then they start selling it, and then they'd outlaw that chemical, and they started changing it, And by the time, 15th, 20th generation of them, getting around the legality of it, it was really bad stuff. And yeah, I eventually got highly addicted to it, actually.
I remember hearing we're seeing on the news quite a few stories of like teenagers or whatever, like going through psychosis or, psychotic episodes and having to, get jailed overnight for one reason or another.
There was a large population of people that were using it specifically because their jobs either did drug tests or something, and it was their way of avoiding, because the marketing behind those research chemicals was that it was a cannabis analog or something. Or cannabis analogs.
I'll tell you, when I first started smoking it, it was very similar, like very similar. Yeah. And then afterwards, it was not.
And what I believe is it was only a THC analog. So I think it would be more similar to doing like diamonds and only smoking diamonds, even though you think you're like smoking a bowl. You know what I mean? Like it's more like less like flower and more like just raw THC crystal or something like that.
Mm,
But again, an analog, and probably still nothing
right.
identical to the
And all because they want to fucking outlaw this goddamn natural plant.
right.
You
And
know,
that's
what if
And
what if a carrot got you high?
well,
That'd be crazy.
okay, aren't they doing that with fungi as well right now? Isn't there something going on with the mushroom industry in which like research chemicals are being used instead of mushrooms inside of like chocolate bars or other products? Have you guys read about this at all?
Oh, I absolutely believe that 100%, dude. That's why I don't trust mushroom bars. So I got into the safe space of harm reduction because 15 years ago, I got this hair over here that's
Carrots.
15 years ago, I took 2 hits of blotter acid, and it wasn't blotter acid. It wasn't LSD. It was, I don't know what the fuck it was, but it was something that spun me for a trip that made me never want to touch the shit ever again. And that was one of the LSD was one of those things that like changed my perspective on how I wanted to go, be an entrepreneur. It changed a lot of things about my personality, and in a lot of better ways. It changed my social ability. It changed a lot of ways I perceive things, and in a lot of ways, and I actually helped me like get through a lot of traumas and made me just feel better. I did most certainly consider it a therapy, and whatever the fuck this stuff was, spun me for a loop. But anyway, I went and looked into some information about what was going around at the time, and 25i NBOME, if it's bitter, it's a spitter, was going around, and there were actually people dying from this stuff. Again, a research chemical that is being passed off as LSD. It can fit on a blotter paper. It's nothing like LSD. It doesn't have the same safety profile as it. You could have a tolerance to LSD and take 10 doses to try to get high, and it's not going to kill you. With this stuff, if you tried to take 10 doses, it would kill you. So if you thought that it was LSD and you accidentally took a 10 strip, people take 10 strips of LSD all the time. If you took a 10 strip, it would kill you. I think like 5 to 7 would be a lethal dose. So, and so there are cases of people dying on 25 IMBOME of a direct result of the substance, not of getting into a car accident or something. But there's also just again, I talked about my cousin earlier getting poisonous mushrooms instead of psilocybe mushrooms. Today that's a little bit easier to
Test.
Well, you can test, and that's these are the important things about it. Is within the last decade, or testing reagents have become available for all those substances. So you can test your mushroom bar for psilocybin. You can test it for you can test it for also adulterants. That's a big thing. Now, because research chemical analogs change all the time, they're coming out with new chemical compounds. They don't have test reagents for everything, but a lot of like the big ones, fentanyl, that's a big one you might want to look for. And maybe even to make sure that you don't just have some 2CI or 25i or any of these other ones that are much cheaper to source through other countries or wherever you're going to get them on the dark web. They're cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about mushrooms and fungi, I mean, there's so much easier ways to consume, including
So much,
growing your own. And I mean, ridiculously easy.
so much easier.
Plug my buddy fucking Tanazi, Sacred 3 mushrooms, man. He's up in Denver, and he sends out kits that all you have to do is inject. He's already got everything already done. It's already all sanitized and whatnot. You just pull it out, pull the syringe, inject it. A couple, I don't know, weeks, months later, you've got mushrooms out your ass. I mean, hopefully not legally.
Hopefully not actually.
Literally, yeah.
Fruit, when you can actually see the fruit, it's just so much safer. And
You might have missed the injection.
Yeah, you missed it. Yep, it was not very sanitized at that point in time.
The fact that you don't know what could be on blotter paper or in a mushroom or not in a mushroom, in a chocolate bar or a a beverage. You know what I mean? A lot of times pills. You know, pills are a hugely common one. MDMA is most commonly methadone, which is an analog of MDMA. It's also an analog of methamphetamine. It's also legal, you know, and they ship it and whatever, and it's a stimulant. Amphetamine, you just get raw amphetamine products, you know, stackers. People fucking empty out stackers and replace MD, you know, give you stackers for ecstasy. You're not gonna know the difference, you know. A lot of that stuff, it reacts the same on your serotonin system, your dopamine system. Big difference is dosage. You know, the more dosage, lighter dosage. Some of them have ever so, but I mean, grow mushroom. You know, yeah, grow your mushrooms. What Pedro said, Hypnosi, and you don't know what's in any of this shit. That's the thing. It's
Do
you
yourself.
can get testing reagents. Unfortunately, testing reagents were criminalized. They are considered paraphernalia. So, he who created the paraphernalia laws in office is to blame for test kits. You know, you can't even test your drugs for fentanyl because it's illegal to carry them. You know, you can
So
you
wild.
can get them though. Bunkpolice.com sells them. Dancesafe.com sells them, so you can
Dance safe. God, I remember Dance safe back in the day. Holy cow.
access test kits.
But yeah, I mean, even for the person that's wanting to start up their first grow or whatnot, you know, think about it realistically. If you're wanting to start up your first grow, you're not a big consumer. You don't smoke a lot of cannabis, right? I would assume you don't smoke a ton of cannabis.
I mean,
So-
it got to the point for me where it was just expensive enough. It's like, why am I not just
So
growing this? So,
exactly. So that's what I'm getting at, you know. So you can do a 3x3 or 4x4, and you know, for sure the first grow is going to cost you more than you could have probably bought that cannabis if you do
probably,
it right.
yeah.
That's the unfortunate part. But on the plus side, you've just grown your own cannabis. You've learned a lot. You've started to become, you know, self-sufficient, and then every grow from there on out. Technically, the flower becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper because you've already done paid for your investment initially. And then yeah, so just knowing what goes into your cannabis, knowing what goes into your all of your food, you know, doing your own permaculture and whatnot is an amazing way to go about it. And yeah, man, it just any way that you can be more self-sufficient in the things that you consume overall is obviously the I would say for me is a goal, you know.
Dude, once I found out that that our food supply is just as corrupt as our drug supply, or I should say just as tainted as our drug supply. That's why, yeah.
Food and Drug Administration, what? Food and what? In the same sentence?
Yeah, administration and food in the same sentence. Food and drug. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now all of a sudden it's like ding, ding, ding. Oh shit. I know.
Yeah, that Amos Miller case is going on right now. You know, the right to have a subscription model CSA is at, you know, that is at risk right now. You know, subscription model farming is at risk right now. The Amos Miller farm was, you got too large. They were too large for that model. So, you know, they want them to conventionalize, and they don't believe that they need to, and neither do their customers is the thing. Now, if your customers are screaming, you know, they need regulation, that's one thing, but they're not. You know, it's just the agency that is. Amos Miller, they're a Amish, I believe cattle farm is the primary source of their farm, but they run a non-USDA model that operates off of subscription base. Now, you can't sell meat, but you can sell the live animal, and you can also sell a share of your farm. So there's many ways that farmers, small farms throughout the country, throughout the world, probably depending on where you are in the world, but definitely in this country, in America, where they farmers are able to conduct business through
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
Sounds
we,
like
we
you,
subscribe to a CSA up here.
subscriptions.
sounds like you sell
Yeah.
me the pig, and then you can pay me to then kill it and butcher it for you, and
Yeah.
Well,
then
we get a lot of
They're
supplemental
they're loopholes.
veggies and everything, plus meat, all from the same place. It's great.
Nope.
One
Yep.
flat rate for the year, and boom.
Pay me this butcher consultation fee, and I'll gift you this
Yeah,
200 pounds
yeah.
of pork.
There you go.
And so a lot of farmers operate on models very similar. And if you want to look into those type of things, Joel Salatin, he has a pretty cool book that's interesting called "Everything I Want to Do Is Illegal." And there's a couple other books by Joel Salatin that just do discuss, ways of different farming methods. Is really popular for his book Pasture Poultry Profits.
Right.
In that book specifically, he'll teach you how to work your, some models to sell meat specifically, because he doesn't have any FDA license. He's a very large farm. The fact that our food is so, I don't know, just stepped on in so many, in lack of better sense of phrasing. There's so much added ingredients that aren't necessary. Maybe for shelf preservation or maybe for some other things. Growing your own, I'm just an advocate of doing it yourself. And yes, for sustainability reasons, but I mean, for us, medical reasons, just health reasons, just general, again, making sure the supply chain doesn't, anti-fragility reasons, just a lot of that is that. And that's right. I really enjoy permaculture, organic growing. Our outdoor garden never really got into that is all organic. I don't like putting any chemicals. I don't spray any I don't want to take the balance off. I want to do everything as natural as possible outside. Our indoor garden, I'm already disconnected from the sun. We're growing under electric light, expensive electric light still, but nonetheless, we're not grounded in any means. So we're still kind of running hydroponics. Now, we do not waste water out the bottom of our hydro with 3 minutes left to your show. So we try to consume all of our minerals and then smoke it in our plants, and then the waste, root balls, those get composted. So
Bro,
What's
sell
that?
that shit and bring that organics indoor. I'm telling you.
we
Sell-
do plan to bring our organics indoor. We don't know how long it's going to take to get through this Jax. We again, we don't want to get, maybe we try to sell some of it or whatever. But then there's more cost in getting into
Yeah,
it. So
you could get a couple LED lights for some of those bags. I bet
Right.
you'll give it enough time.
probably give it enough time. I'm hoping the value of those Jax bags will go up. That's why I bought so many. I was like, somebody's going to need some of this. It's going to
Yeah,
be me in
not
10
us.
years.
Yeah.
Stash some of it away for in the future and need it on Mars. But I really appreciate you guys letting me
Yeah,
come on and chat away, man. It's been a lot of fun being on here with you guys.
Of course, Red. It's
Cheers,
been
man.
a
Appreciate
pleasure,
you.
Great having you
man.
on.
Yeah,
I-
here we are. Here we are at the end, man. You wanna throw some plugs out there?
Yeah, well,
Fire
Becca,
yourself up.
I definitely want to shout out Becca. Do you want to come say hi real fast? No, she doesn't want to say hi real fast.
It's all right. We saw her enough. She was
You
walking in
see
the
on the
background.
Michigan Bros Grow Show. She was back here walking around. She's my better half. Daddy Red, for sure. The Michigan Bros Grow Show. Mama Red, she's out there too, probably listening.
And where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram mostly at Red Setter Farm. Also at Rosemary's Oasis. Becca primarily takes care of that account, but that's going to be our food system type thing. And actually, we might over umbrella the whole Red Setter Farm thing with the Rosemary's Oasis and make Red Setter Farm a portion of that. So,
And they've got chickens, and I mean, yeah, I really wish we could have gotten to that garden more too. The backyard gardening stuff. Maybe
we'll come back on as Rosemary's Oasis next time.
there you go.
We can get into all of that stuff because that's a whole nother, talking about permaculture, dude. I could talk for another 2 hours just on that. So
It was just really cool, like walking past this wall of sunflowers, and then into maybe by the a half dozen chickens, and then through just this beautifully laid out, and I'll call it manicured. You might not call it manicured, but just beautiful manicured backyard garden with dozens of different fruits and vegetables and flowers and cannabis mixed into it. And it's really cool the way you had that going.
Thanks,
I'd love to talk more about that again. Maybe as Rosemary's Oasis. I can't get it.
Man, dude.
Yeah,
Try to dump it.
I already started the show with it, AKA I can't pronounce it, so we'll just leave it there. Find him on Instagram at
come hang out at the
Rosemary's
Fledge with
Oasis.
us sometime. And
Yeah.
I really thank everybody in chat and for everybody tuning in, and for you guys most certainly for having me on. And thanks for all the kind words, man. I really appreciate it. You guys are very nice.
Yeah.
Just keep growing those great
I
turps.
can't wait to smoke and sesh with you guys, and especially you, Superior and Pedro. Hopefully, we get a chance to sesh in person soon.
I'll be downstate at some point. We cross the bridge every now and then.
Every few years he comes south of the wall, But hey, guys, cheers. Make sure you find us after the show on Spotify, everywhere you find your podcast. We've got a great lineup of guests coming here over the next few weeks, so stay tuned and cheers.
Take care, everybody. Have a great one.
Everybody.